Welcome back. In this set of lectures, I'm going to talk through the objections, the many objections to deep ecology that are presented by Murray Bookchin in his well-known essay, Deep Ecology versus Social Ecology. I'm going to talk through the long list of specific problems that was presented on the previous slide in just a moment. But first, I want to notice that these criticisms fall into mostly two broad categories. One is the criticism that deep ecology doesn't adequately recognize the role of society and social factors, that is, patterns of interaction between people, or even historical developments that have led to certain kinds of interactions between people, as themselves generative of environmental problems. So from Bookchin's perspective, a lot of the environmental problems that we face have come about because of a particular history of our societies, including a history of our way of thinking about our relations with each other. And so because deep ecology does not really address that history directly and doesn't have much to say or much of a detailed analysis of how social relationships and social factors can produce environmental problems or can be at the cause of environmental problems, then deep ecology is not going to do a good job of addressing the environmental problems. Another kind of objection is that deep ecology opts for a spiritualist or religious approach when Bookchin thinks that a more naturalistic or scientific type of approach would be more effective. So Bookchin is very suspicious of the appeal to kind of mysticism or spirituality throughout the deep ecology, the 1985 deep ecology text, at least. He means to, he makes the argument that that way of trying to address environmental problems is not going to be effective and is kind of misleading in terms of where we should put our efforts. Now, I said that these are the two broad categories of criticism, but not every single one of these individual criticisms that I've delineated here fits neatly into one or the other. So it's worth going through them, each of them in detail. I made an effort to try to capture all of the distinct criticisms, or at least the vast majority of them, as contained in this article, which, as I mentioned before, is quite rich in criticism of deep ecology. So the first is that the deep ecologists seem to bring together sources and opinions and perspectives from authors that are that don't normally see eye to eye. So there's a kind of eclecticism, you could call it, that is drawing on materials from lots of different places. They draw from Eastern religion, they draw from poetry, they draw from, movements like Earth First, but they also draw from, at one point they, talk about coalitions with the Christian tradition. So they're drawing from lots of different sources, and there's a worry there that Bookchin expresses, that this eclecticism makes it harder for people to discriminate between the ideas and proposals that are really fruitful and are defensible and maybe even are ethically justifiable or relatively ethically unproblematic, and those that are more ethically problematic. Like, for instance, Bookchin thinks that David Foreman and the Earth First movement, that's a very ethically problematic movement. Some have even described such movements that claim to put environmental issues or ecological interests above human interests, and are even, contemplate cases where we would have to let people die or make people die in order to save the environment, as something that they call eco-fascism, because the position seems to be troublingly similar to the position of like fascist regimes like the Nazis, or Japan during World War II, where individual human lives were not valued very highly in comparison with a kind of collective endeavor. And so it's troubling for Bookchin and a lot of other authors who think they discern this tendency that they call ecofascism in environmental literature like that of deep ecology and Earth First. It's troubling when they see indications of the willingness of environmentalists to sacrifice human lives for the sake of environmental ambitions or ideals. And so they pejoratively sometimes call this ecofascism. So there's a worry with the eclecticism in deep ecology that deep ecologists and those who affiliate with the movement are going to be less able to discriminate between very problematic views that border on ecofascism and more well-justified views like concerns about human damage to environments that might be ameliorated in ways that are not eco-fascist. Relatedly, Bookchin presents some suspicion about the various what you could call anti-humanist sentiments or misanthropic sentiments in some of the deep ecology principles. So, for instance, we noticed in the list of the principles from 1985 that humans are described as a kind of threat to the well-being of the Earth. And so Bookchin describes this as a kind of human guilt, that humans are, according to deep ecology, humans are guilty because they're humans, or that it's something, there's even kind of a suggestion with the whole ecocentric versus anthropocentric contrast, that maybe it's something in human nature that's evil, that leads humans to be a kind of enemy of the Earth. And so the thrust of these aspects of deep ecology, to where humans are sort of pitted as opponents of the natural world, is one that can easily lead to something like ecofascism. Another criticism that Bookchin makes is that some of the deep ecologists seem to be trying to advance their own careers by what they're proposing, trying to sell books perhaps. This criticism is a little bit suspicious to me because an author's motives for whatever theory they propose is not necessarily an indication of of problems with the theory itself. Someone can say a true thing or say the right thing or make a good proposal, even if their motives for saying that thing or making that proposal are what we might describe as bad ones. So this seems like a little bit beside the point to me and not that effective of a criticism. But I wanted to mention it because it's one of the things that Bookchin says.